Okay. So, you know my name. My name's Jackie, and I have come from a background of teaching, education. I taught for many years in the state and the private systems, and I think I never really saw any issue with the education system until I listened to a talk by a guy called Sir Ken Robinson. I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but he's a bit of a legend. And Sir Ken spoke about how schools kill creativity. And I was just so undone by what I heard that I had to stop the track that I was taking. So I had a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old at that point. And in my mind, I was preparing them for school and to be successful at school. So I had my 18-month-old had learnt her letters and knew that sort of thing. And when I heard this talk, it so flipped me on my head. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with them now? Because I don't think I can send them to school because of what he'd spoken about, how schools kill creativity. And I was in a bit of a state, not knowing what to do, and just sort of talking with God and praying about what could education look like. And it took a few years. We actually started a bit of a cooperative when Jed was 5, but that was all too intense. And having other little people, we just gave that away because it was also too much like school. And so we thought, oh, we've got to re-engineer this and think it through more. So I spent the next couple of years just researching, reading, trying to work out what a best practice could look like. And so tonight I wanted to share what I found in that research, just to give you a bit of background as to why we're doing Dream School like we're doing it, and the importance of making a shift and a change in the education system now, while we have such a golden opportunity, because it's highly unusual, the time of the world history that we're in. And it doesn't come along often that a whole globe is in the throes of being shaken and change being available, I guess, with what's going on. So yeah, I'll just run through the key points that really stood out to me in my research, just so you get a background for that. So I'll just share my screen now. And pop it on. Is that all good? Can you guys see that come up? Excellent. Okay. So the first thing that was really prominent to me was in reading a book by a guy called Tony Wagner. He wrote a book called Creating Innovators, and in that he interviewed 150 people who are at the cutting edge of their field. And he wanted to find out what made them innovative, what made them or drove them to being a source of change on the earth. And as part of his research, he determined that innovation and creativity are the only capacities that are immune to outsourcing. He believes that within 5 years, there are a number of key careers that will be illegitimate or will not be available, as far as a human goes, because we'll have automated it or we'll have outsourced it. So for an economy to flourish, he determines that innovation and creativity are key factors, and that our schooling system is not focused on that. And we'll go into the reasons why. So they're key capacities to nurture and to grow in our children for their own future and for the future of our nation in the world scheme. And he then determined that there was a pathway that was common for every person that he interviewed. And that pathway was quite astounding to me. And it's one that is just unknown by all of us, or who haven't read his book. His pathway says that innovation begins in play. So when kids play, they are able to learn communication skills. They're able to solve problems. They're able to promote, it's able to promote the ability for them to self-regulate. So they change their behavior depending on the reflection that they're getting from their friends. It allows them to delve in the inside of them and to experiment, you know, with what they enjoy or what they are drawn to. So this play, where in our school system, we're taking it away from kids. We're not nurturing that. They're getting less and less playtime, and it seems that, you know, we're becoming as a culture less and less creative. So that first step of play then leads kids to develop a passion for something. It lets them investigate and find what they could be passionate or interested in. And that passion takes energy, it takes time. And what it does is it actually activates the intrinsic motivation on the inside of children, where they will do whatever they need to do to get to where they want to go. And this is key in Dream School's philosophy, that we give kids an exposure to things that they normally wouldn't have, but it grabs a hold of their intrinsic motivation, and it lights a fire on the inside of them. And when you get a child or an adult passionate about something, they then determine that thing that they have has a greater impact than just themselves, that it can have an influence on somebody else. And that then becomes their purpose. So what they have is not just about developing their own interests. It's actually about contributing to a larger community or a larger sphere of influence. And that is really significant, because those who find their purpose actually are the ones that create maximum change on the earth. And I really believe that, you know, as educators, that needs to be a key in the way we do learning, the way we do teaching. But school is unfortunately not set up that pathway, and many people live a real mediocre life because they've not been able to experiment or explore what their own passions could possibly be. And therefore they actually, the whole world misses out on their unique touch on the earth. So it's actually a real important thing that we look a bit more deeply at this pathway, and work out how we're going to integrate that into learning and education. So Sir Ken Robinson, in his talk titled Schools Kill Creativity, sort of unveiled the reality that education, our system of education, has been set up along the lines of the industrial era. So with the conveyor belt as its main sort of focus of methodology. So you get on a conveyor belt, you're batched according to date of manufacture. You have inputs at certain times in that process, whether you're ready for them or not. And then you fall off the end, often not knowing what to do with yourselves. You know, a lot of people don't understand what's on the inside of them because it's never been exposed to them. Therefore, they get to the end of their education and don't know what to do. They fall into something, or they do something because their parents tell them they should, or whatever. It's not been because they've discovered what, you know, they've been created, the purpose they've been created to fulfill. So what happens in this is that because school is the antithesis of what innovation and creativity, how they're facilitated. So, for example, innovation and creativity is where people are able to ask great questions and find answers to those problems that they come across in their life through asking a great question. School is all about finding the right answer rather than asking a great question. Innovators experiment, so they do things that nobody else has done before to find an answer that nobody else has come up with before. But in school, experiments come with a predetermined outcome, and you can fail an experiment. Now that's a really weird idea, really, to fail an experiment, because experiment is all about finding things that work and finding things that don't work. And then innovators observe things more keenly than people who are not innovative or haven't practiced innovative capacity or skills. So there was this guy in India who, day to day would drive through India and see families on bicycles. But this one particular day, as he was driving, there was this whole family on a motorbike, and it was raining. And unfortunately, in the wet, the family slipped, and the whole family was thrown off the motorbike. And he was quite aghast like that. He was following very closely behind them and saw this all play out in front of him. And even though he'd seen it many times, he's like, a question arose in his spirit. It was like, why can't people in this demographic have a car? What is it about the manufacturing of cars process that eliminates these people from that option? And so he decided to start experimenting, and he thought maybe he'd get a motorbike and put a cover on it or something. And he tried many different ways, but then he came up with the concept of a small car and sourced the different parts for the car in a way that meant that the car cost $2,500. So it hit the market as the cheapest car in the world, which meant that a whole lot more families could afford a car and be protected in that way. So it's really interesting that when we have the capacity to observe, we see situations differently, and we see opportunities in situations that other people just see as a random circumstance or normal in their own lives. So we've got core skills of innovation being questioning, experimenting, observing. Another one is the ability to network, but not to position network, which is what goes on in businesses. It's actually to ideas network, to share ideas and to collaborate those ideas in a way that brings about something that never would have happened if it was just me with an idea or just you with an idea. But when we put those ideas together and grow those ideas, we end up with something that's far more appropriate or far more creative than we would have had in the beginning. The last one that he discovered was the capacity to associate, to put things together that have never been put together before. And there's a company in America who are the cutting edge design firm in the world, actually. They're called IDEO. And what they do is when their teams get stuck on a design concept or problem solving talk or whatever they're going to, whatever their purpose is for that particular, what am I trying to say? For they're solving their problem for a company that comes to them. That they force themselves to put two things together that haven't been put together before and come to a solution using those concepts. So they have a box that sits under the desk, and just random things like maybe a squishy or a toy or whatever it is they have under their desk. If they come to a problem they can't solve, they pick two things out of this box and they force themselves to find a link between the two things. And when they do that, they then apply that concept to the problem they're trying to solve. So associating being putting things together that haven't been put together before causes people, the practice of that causes people to be innovative. So innovation in itself isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you can grow and develop. And if these core skills are utilized and nurtured, you can't help but come up with innovative solutions. Yeah, so that really puts it down to the fact that education itself should be facilitating the journey of finding your element, finding your purpose. And where it's not is, unfortunately, it affects the whole of society, where society is functioning at a lower level than it possibly could. And we personally are as well. My husband, Anthony, he was yeah, he had some sort of dyslexia, although it wasn't labeled at school or understood at school. And he was labeled as being a failure through the schooling system. So he didn't fit the boxes, you know, he didn't tick the criteria. He was somebody who, you know, the system would call incompetent or behind or slow. And anyway, so he exited the schooling system and went to work in a factory packing Weet-Bix. And he had a friend, thank God, who invited him over occasionally to her house, and her flatmate was studying architecture. And in studying architecture, she would just share her assignments with Anth. And then Anthony all of a sudden recognized that he was going over to their place, not necessarily for social reasons, but to see the progress in her assignments. And so he thought, oh, there's something in that. And so he went to TAFE and topped his year in TAFE, came out with distinctions and all of that, and is now running his own architectural design practice. And yeah, getting a lot of traction with that. So it's really interesting that the education system never exposed him to the world of design in a way that he was able to explore what was in him. But through a bit of a fragile and random process, not really, but, you know, fragile and random, looking from the outside, it seems that way. But through that connection, he found something that he was really passionate about, and has become, you know, his destiny, his purpose in life. So it'd be really cool if our education faculties could facilitate this journey of kids finding what their passions or their purpose are in life. So active experiences in real life are much more likely to cause learning to occur. Now, this is fairly obvious. If you look back in your own memory bank and think of your own childhood, what are the things that stand out? What are the memories that are the strongest? And it's likely to include things that you're involved in physically, real life experiences, where there was meaning and where there is an emotional experience, emotional content. And what that does is it transfers information from the short term to the long term in a far more efficient way. So for me, for example, when I was at school, we were in a rural area, and we were just hanging out during lunchtime, and these boys had caught a mouse in the field, and they brought this mouse in a wooden pencil case up to us, and we obviously wanted to see what the mouse looked like. So they opened the lid, and the mouse jumped out, and the mouse started running around like a scared rabbit. And we started jumping up and down like idiots. And unfortunately, one of my friends jumped on the mouse, and that sort of ended the mouse's career. So I gingerly put a brick on the mouse's head just to make sure it died peacefully. And when we went back into class, our teacher had heard of what had happened. And instead of going into some, you know, drone about social studies or whatever, he got the mouse. He got us to get the mouse, and we stretched the mouse out on a board and pinned its feet down. And he got his scalpel out and started to cut the mouse open. And we got this incredible lesson of biology, you know, the organs in a mouse. And they were so beautifully arranged. It sounds pretty gross, but, you know, it was just an exquisite experience of seeing creation that you never normally get to see, identifying organs and how compact it all is in a mouse. And for me, that's a highlight in my education, where it was real life and it was hands-on, it was meaningful, and there was a lot of emotion involved in it. So that has moved from my short-term to my long-term memory very efficiently and stayed there. So if we can connect emotion, real life with the learning that our kids do, it will much more efficiently give them their education. So unfortunately, the current system is literally causing brain damage to our kids, to some kids. when there is a prolonged period of stress, cortisol gets released into the brain. And that cortisol's purpose is for a fight or flight response. And we need it for that. But when there's an extended period of stress, that cortisol stays in our system. It's actually meant to be uptaken after that emergency situation. But when stress is ongoing, it stays in our brain. And that cortisol actually works to change the brain structures. And it inhibits connections. So it actually severs some of the dendritic connections, the fibers in our brain, and it decreases the number of stem cells. So that interferes with learning, it interferes with memory, it lowers your immune function, increases heart disease, mental illness. Back 7 years ago, 26% of students identified that they were suffering from anxiety and depression and mental health issues. And they determined that school pressure was one of the main reasons for their anxiety. That's no good. You know, we have created this system that puts so much pressure on people that it literally causes brain damage and lower life expectancy. And I'm sure you guys have heard of NAPLAN, the testing regime of the government, where every couple of years kids get tested. Now, I've talked to families where their child at the beginning of a NAPLAN year starts to get stressed and anxious. And that is months in the outworking. So I think NAPLAN was happening in May. So that's 5 months of living in a constant state of anxiety. And that's no good. You know, this whole testing regime, what purpose does it serve anyway? You know, at Dream School, we don't do any assessment. We don't do any assignments. What we do is challenges. And those challenges invigorate learning rather than cause stress and anxiety. So we need a bit of a change happening in our system. Those labels that we get through education often stick for life, and they're often negative. So if you don't, even if you're getting A's, you can sometimes think to yourself, well, I should be doing better than that. I should have got that right on the exam. And you can determine yourself as a failure. And that's very, very common in the education system, for people to decide for themselves or to be told via grading, via teachers, via other students that they're not good enough, that they need to improve. And that sort of sets in place a pathway of apathy in some cases, or a pathway of overexertion. So you get the workaholics and you get those that can't get off the couch. And so either extreme is because labels have been put on us, or we've received them in some form, and they stick. They determine our behavior from then on. And that's not achieving our destiny. It's not achieving what God has put us on the earth for. So we have subjects at school. We have maths, we have English, we have biology, science, whatever. And when we do this, what happens is that we become, because we've become book learners or blackboard learners, when we get into a situation where we need to apply what we've learnt, it can be a very difficult situation. So you often hear of universities, of companies who want to employ university graduates, and they're like, well, yeah, he's got the qualifications, but he has no idea what he's doing. You know, they can't seem to join dots, and they can't seem to put what they've learnt into practice in a real life context. And, you know, so for example, maths is in everything. So maths is in art, it's in music, it's in science, it's in statistics. Maths is there. We take it out of all of those things, all of those contexts. We put it in a worksheet and we say, learn your maths, learn your percentages. And so you sit there colouring in boxes to show 86%. Or you have to do, for the next 5 years, you have to do a segment on ratios to try and get you to learn your maths. What if maths was back in context? So for example, what if somebody was running a business, and in running their business, they obviously need to learn how to add and subtract decimals. They need to learn how to work out percentages. And in that context, meaning is very much a forefront. They want to get a profit. They want to give the right change. And so they'll learn it in a far more efficient way because it's been taught in context, or it's learnt in the context of how it's going to be used. My son ran a business. He decided that he didn't want to be in debt anymore because he had bought a cat, and his idea was to mate his cat with our other cat and to produce offspring and sell those offspring. So it was his business plan. And he got partway along because he'd gone into debt with us. And every time he earned some money, that money would go to paying off his debt. And he determined one day that he was sick of debt. So he decided his plan to eliminate debt in his life was to get a big container of water and go and sit out by the side of the road to fill up people's water bottles as they came past. Now, I had to bite my tongue because I was like, oh, I don't know if that's going to work. That just sounds a little bit iffy there. I don't know if people would stop to fill up their water bottles. But anyway, a few hours later, 2 or 3 hours later, he comes back in and I'm like, oh, how'd you go? And he goes, oh, I got $40. And I'm like, what? You earned $40 filling up somebody else's water bottle? And he's like, yep. So apparently his friend had come along and had added to his array of goods, his offering of goods, and had helped him make a bit more profit than he would have otherwise. So the next morning he was up at 6 o'clock baking banana bread to put out there in his stall to make more money. And he came back in with $100 after 5 or so hours of sitting out there. So eliminated his debt and learnt very keenly that debt isn't fun. That debt is not something you really want to get into. So hopefully later in his life, that lesson will kick in when he gets an opportunity to get in debt and he realizes that that's not the way he's going to go. So this whole, rather than disassociating subjects, integrating them and making them meaningful and applicable to what your circumstances are, becomes a really cool lifelong lesson. Just-in-time learning is far more meaningful than just-in-case learning. Just in case you need this for the test, you've got to learn it. Just in case you want to be a doctor, this is what you've got to do. These are the subjects you've got to take. Whether the information is meaningful to you right now or not, just in case you need to stuff your brain full of all this information, that's not the best way to learn. And if we look at our own lives and we ask ourselves, what do I use now that I spent 13 years at school learning, we'd probably come up with a small, short list. And it's probably going to include things like basic mathematics, basic language skills, perhaps a bit of general knowledge. But there's probably not 13 years worth of learning applicable in our lives right now. So why do we do it? Why not move to a just-in-time model, where just in time you're doing a project or you're doing something you're really passionate about and you don't have this piece of the puzzle. Just in time, you go get that bit of the puzzle. You go talk to that person who knows more than you do, or you go look up that video that teaches you how to do this. I remember we were creating an aquaponics system at Dream School. Now, none of us knew what aquaponics was, so we had to Google that to begin with. But we loved the concept of growing things in a circular system. So anyway, the tasks were divvied out, and some kids had the media to look at, some kids had the structure to sort out. My group had the plumbing. Now, I'm not a plumber. I have never done any plumbing. I have not know the first thing about plumbing, but I got plumbing, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? So together with the kids, we created a model. We went and got some containers and we positioned the containers as to how the aquaponics system was to be set up. Jay was actually running this challenge, Jay. So we got our containers sorted. Then we went and got some straws, and we used the straws as our piping system. And we used the straws to show us where the water would need to travel from and to. And we connected this all up with straws, which was really helpful because we physically could see what piping we needed. So we then scaled that up and went to Bunnings and bought the piping we needed, the elbows we needed, the taps we needed, because in our model, it showed us what to do there. And the kids even brought in some little tiny fish things to complete the working model. But when we scaled it up and we actually got into the plumbing, we knew what we were doing. So this whole just in case thing, I feel that I could solve, a simple plumbing problem now, because just in time, when it was very relevant and very meaningful, I learned some plumbing skills. It's not information that was for a later date. It was very important and immediately applicable. And that was for the whole challenge. We had to play our part. So I couldn't just say, oh, look, plumbing's not my thing. I'll need to pass that off. I had to fulfill my role. Our team had to fulfill their role in creating the aquaponics system. So you had a sort of community pressure even there that helped learning take place because it was for the greater good. Yeah, so that was a memory that I have of dream school that stuck with me too, because it was so hands-on in real life. So better late than early. Now, this is a really interesting thing. There was a book written by a guy called Dr. Raymond Moore and his wife, Dorothy. And that was the title of their book. And in that book, they determined that it was better to leave the formal aspect of schooling till later, rather than to try and force children earlier and earlier into a more formal situation and more formal context of learning. And they determined that there was this thing called the integrated maturity level, where all the systems of the body seem to mature between 8 to 10 years of age. So they took eyesight, for example. Now, our eyes are malleable and almost plasticky before 8 to 10 years of age, and then they harden. And he was looking at the statistics of the countries that have brought their schooling age earlier and earlier, and seeing a notable increase in eyesight problems. Because prior to school, your eyesight work is mostly long distance. It's not intricate and it's not focused, generally, not for hours a day. But when you go to school, you're looking at things up close. You are looking at things with you're tracking them with your eyes, fine print, directional. And what would happen is that the children's eyes, who are plastic and malleable, will actually distort with that level of intensity. And then they would harden. And then you're left with eyesight problems for the rest of your life, because of the work that your eyes have had to do in a school setting. So they determined that along with every other system of the body, so emotional maturity, when you are before 8 to 10, you're not emotionally capable of dealing with competition. Yet you go to a classroom where you've been 1-on-2 with an adult, 1-on-3, 1-on-5 with an adult, as a parent, in a parent situation. You go to school and you've got 1-on-30, 1-on-28 kids. So you immediately set up a system of competition. And that doesn't just stay with that relationship. Competition for playground resources, competition for grades, competition for friendships. It all seems to move in the direction of competition. And that actually distorts, again, what is possible. Because when you get into competitive mode, it's me against you. It's my idea is better than yours. There's no sense of collaboration or synergy. However, with synergy, for synergy to happen, there has to be collaboration and not competition. And synergy brings about results that have never been seen before. There was a really interesting, back in that IDEO, the company IDEO, they gave their teams a challenge. And that challenge was to develop a humidity crib for a third world nation. So this one particular team decided that they would have their first meeting up a tree because they wanted to jolt themselves out of the normal way of doing things and to think creatively. So they get themselves up their tree, they hold their meeting, and they just decide that in order to really understand the situation in a third world nation, that they'd better actually go to one. Because it's very easy to project what you think the issues are onto something or someone remote, but not really understand what's going on. So they took themselves off to Nepal. And when they got to Nepal, they went into one of the hospitals and discovered that all the hallways were full of humidity cribs. Now, like, well, we could make a new version of humidity crib, but that's probably going to end up in the same place, doing nothing, sitting in a hallway. So they're like, okay, what are we going to do? So then they discovered that the problem with babies, little preemie babies who need humidity cribs, wasn't in the major centers of Nepal. It was out in the outlying regions, the rural regions. And so they determined to go out there and to start talking to the people out there. When they got out there, they realized that the people in the rural communities didn't have the capacity to get themselves into the regional centres where humidity cribs were available. So the humidity cribs sat in the hospitals and the babies died. So they realized that they needed to come up with a solution that was applicable where it was needed. And they created this sleeping bag type of contraption that would heat up with water, because out there was no electricity. And so they had to make something that was right for the context. And they created this sleeping bag and started to test it. And they had like a thermometer gauge on the sleeping bag so that the people could tell when the sleeping bag was the right temperature. However, they came up with another problem, and that was that the people in these communities determined that Western medicine was too intense and it was over-scripted. So they would halve every medication they got. So when it came to this sleeping bag, they would raise the temperature to half of what it should have been. Thus, the baby didn't get the full effect. So they then had to re-engineer that, and they took off the thermometer and they put on a dot. And so whenever the temperature got to the right temperature, the dot would change color, which meant that they didn't have the issue of the people halving the temperature and the babies being compromised or even dying. So this team, they developed their sleeping bag. They actually recognized its potential, dropped out of university, formed a company, and have been distributing these sleeping bags and saving thousands of babies' lives, which is a really, really cool outcome, you know, to a problem where they hadn't just gone the regular route, but they had pushed themselves out of what was normal to come up with a solution through a synergistic method, through adding ideas together, through building on each other's ideas, not being in competition with each other, and bringing to market something that's changed the world, you know, in certain parts of the world. Yeah, so this actually, the next one is my favorite. Wild rats in their natural environment have more dendritic growth and heavier cortexes, brains, than those in an enriched environment. Now, that study hasn't been replicated in humans yet, but we get the link. So kids that are, well, our whole society is being geared towards enriching our kids' learning. What can we do to enrich their learning? Put them in accelerated classes, or classes for gifted and talented, or, you know, get brightly colored playgrounds and posters and all sorts of things into the environment. When that's actually probably not going to be the best thing for them. If they were out playing in mud, climbing trees, creating shelters, we would probably notice that they would have more dendritic growth, more connections in their brain, and they would probably have heavier cortexes, more content, more capacity in their brains than those who have been dragged up through an enriched environment. So wild rats can help us understand the education process. Who would have known? So that's the learning that I got from the research. They're the key points that I got from the research that I've done. And through that, started to develop a model that could possibly encapsulate the best parts of this research. How we could do real life hands-on learning, how we could do synergy, how we could do just-in-time learning. And so we came up with the model that's now Dream School. And I'd love to share that with you. So it might be good just to take a quick break, because I know that's loads of information. And if you'd like to ask me any questions or have a cup of tea or go get a drink of water, you're very welcome to do that. So anyone with questions on any of that content? Just take yourself off mute, Angela. Yeah.
From the group that you've had today over the years, have they come through like from 6 or 7 years upwards, or have people come in, like kids come in at 10, 11, 12, like later?
We've had the whole gamut. So we've had kids that have been born into Dream School and moved through. We've had kids that have not done any education in the school system, but we've had the others too. So we've had kids that have done most of their education in the schooling system and joined us later. And you do notice a difference, but it's never too late. You know, it's never too late to start to nurture innovation and creativity in your kids. You know, start to give them broader options that allow for the growth in their skills of innovation. Yeah.
That's good.
Good question.
Can I add something there quickly? I am a long-time Dream School mum. I have been in Dream School since day one, so I have a good perspective. I've got 3 kids. My oldest is 20, and he went through the school system until grade 7, and then came to Dream School for a few years. Then I have a 15-year-old who went to school for prep and grade 1, and then came to Dream School and is currently still at Dream School. And I also have almost 5-year-old who was born in the Dream School environment. So I've got a little bit of history with Dream School. But what I wanted to say is Jackie's made some really good points about the education side of things. But as a mum, it's the other things that I know, the social skills, the emotional skills, the friendships, it's the other things beyond education that you know, she may end up covering soon as well, but things that I've noticed, that they're more confident, they relate to people of all ages very, very easily, you know, their manners are great. And particularly in our Dream School environment, you know, you're not worrying about my child being bullied or anything like that, because you're in close connection. So not only is all the aspects that Jackie talked about in regards to education really important, but beyond that, it ripples out into every single area of a child's life. And it's just, amazing. So just didn't want to forget about all those other things.
Great point, Jay. Yeah, great point. Our kids at the end of each term have the opportunity to share, and mostly, you know, they do it in front of our extended community, and they go from being quite shy to being excessively confident. And also in terms of leadership, you know, they get opportunities through Dream School to grow their leadership capacities, because they're leading challenges, or they're you know, leading a group or whatever. They have that key opportunity, real life hands-on experience of developing leadership skills too, which is very notable. There was one boy who came to Dream School when he was 10, and he hid behind his mum the first 2 or 3 days. He also brought the next day, I think he brought a sleeping bag or a pillowcase to put himself in because he was just so shy and didn't want to be so vulnerable. And now he is one of our leading challenge runners, and very, very confident, finding his niche in life, passion, and he's just an amazing young man. So the growth, they don't have to start out like that, but the growth that happens through just being in community with each other and doing education as we do causes the development of all these things. Yeah, social skills and leadership capacities and things. Cool. All right, well, I'll trip on into Dream School. So Dream School, our vision for Dream School is that we would be able to give the children the ability to dream big dreams and equip them with the capacity to get there. So many of us dream, and as kids, I remember most of my thought time was dreaming, and yet not many of those dreams came to pass. I remember lying in my bed dreaming about making my room into a rainforest, how I could bring in the soil, how I could put stepping stones in where I'd need to put them, the type of plants I wanted to have in there. And yet that dream just died, never became a reality because there was never the opportunity to develop that into something real. But with our kids, we want to give them the ability to dream. We don't want to crush that capacity to dream big dreams. But we also know that it's not just about dreaming, it's about scaffolding their experiences. What do you need to cause that dream to come to pass? So it may be you need information, maybe that you need practical experience with somebody who knows more than you do. It may be that you need mentoring. You may need some materials or tools. What is it that will get you from the dream to the completion of that dream? And that's really very much embedded in our planner. So when anyone wants to run a challenge, we have a planner that they need to fill out. And that asks them to articulate what their dream is in a sentence. So their dream might be to create an aquaponics system, or it might be to make a pair of shoes, or it might be to be a pilot. Whatever that dream is, what is the dream in a sentence? And once they've articulated that dream, it then asks them, how is this dream, how is the outworking of this dream going to develop the core skills of an innovator? How does it cause people to ask great questions? How does it get them to observe things more closely? How does it get them to associate things that have never been put together before? So how is your challenge going to increase everybody's ability to innovate? So then they go down in the planner and it comes to a daily sort of a schedule. What are they going to do along the way in these 8 weeks to get from the dream to the completion of the dream, or to fulfill that challenge? And they need to then work out what sort of experiences, what sort of knowledge and learning, what sort of connections are really important to us as a collective. That will mean that by the end of this term, we've completed the challenge and a dream has come true. So we have a process which is very clearly sort of defined and articulated in that planner, which is really awesome because kids now in our Dream On, so our older group, are having the experience of planning their dreams. So it's not just a planner that you have to fill in for the sake of somebody superior. It's a planner that becomes relevant all the way through life now as to how, when I've got a dream, what do I do with it? So we have broken the world up into, or categorized the world into 7 sectors, because the world itself is so large and it could feel quite overwhelming. But these sectors force us into real life experiences. And they give a good sort of a categorization of the world, because in our challenges, we want to make sure that we give them experiences in all of these sector areas. So we've got design and construction, anything that you can imagine and create, design and build, you can put under there. We've got business, so recognizing or creating desires and then fulfilling them. governance, so any form of leadership, whether it's in a small organization or whether it's in international capacity, whether it's in a family. Leadership skills are really important. We've got media and communications. How do you get a message across? That could be, anything to do with a poster. It could be a movie. It could be, an animation. It could be music. Just getting a message and sharing that, communicating that. Natural world, how bodies and systems work in nature. How do they interrelate? How do they connect and respond to each other? Global living, cultures and communities, their histories, their nuances, things that are special and unique about them. How do they interact? How do they change over time? And then as a Christian group, we've got the kingdom of God. Now, this is an optional one for those who don't necessarily subscribe to that, and that's totally fine. But this one in our context is how to know God and how to bring heaven to earth. So that's our 7 sectors. We've only ever had one challenge that hasn't fit in a sector. And that challenge came up for us, which is very interesting. But I'll go into that in a minute. So under those sector headings, the kids can run a challenge on anything that they're interested or passionate about, anything that they want to explore or experience. They can run a challenge, but those challenges must be real life. They must be hands-on, meaningful, connected, and celebrated. So at the end of every term, we have a celebration day where all the challenges get to represent, present, share what they've learned, how they've grown, what they've developed, what they've made, to our wider community. So we invite all our extended families, we invite close friends, people who have been involved in the challenge, as part of the community, invite them in, and we share and we celebrate our kids. We have a meal together, and it really is such a bonding and exciting event. The kids really look forward to it, and they just have an audience for what they've done. And that's actually a significant factor in life. It's when you have somebody to influence or somebody to enhance their life, some connection with people, that means that what you do is not just done in a black void or a black hole, but it has some impact on somebody else. That makes it even more meaningful. So our celebration days are a real focal point for our community, and it means that the kids have an audience for what they've done. So I'm just going to run through a few of our challenges and I'll fit them under the sectors for you. So in the top left-hand corner is my daughter Eden, and she's obviously patting a cow. That challenge was to create an animal home and to fill it with a happy creature. So the kids had free rein. They weren't given any boundaries as to what type of animal they were allowed to choose. They could pick whatever they liked, but they had to fit it within the context of Dream School's property boundaries. So one of our girls decided that she wanted a dolphin. She wanted to make a home for a dolphin, and so she thought our pool would be the right place for the dolphin. And we said, yep, go for it. Go do some research and find out what dolphins need to survive and thrive. And she came back recognizing that our pool wasn't going to be the best place for this dolphin. So she changed course and came up with another animal, created a home for it, and filled the home with her happy creature. And so we ended up with Jay? We had 3 lizards. We had a turtle, we had chickens, we had sheep, we have a horse, we had guinea pigs galore, guinea pigs coming out of their ears. We had birds. So we had all sorts of animals find Dream School home for a period of time. And that was, again, just they had to investigate in their process of finding out which animal. They had to understand what these animals needed to eat, what environment they needed to grow in and develop in. They had to look at recognizing signs of disease in the animals, what they looked like and how to treat them. So it was just a real awesome challenge, and we came away much the richer for it. Not the cleaner, but the richer, because the poop that was developed. The next one across, you can see Lucas with a model there. That challenge was under design and construction, and the kids the task put to them was to design and create a model of a playground after they had experienced a number of playgrounds. So they created a review system, a review structure. What did they consider to be important in a playground? Some of the things were risk level, or aesthetics, or materials that the playground was made out of, or the ability of what was in the playground to hold your attention, to grow your strength. So they came up with these criteria that we then went on excursions to a number of different playgrounds that they chose, and they had to play on the playground, then review the playground, and then determine the elements that they liked or could create. And we got these big meter by meter sheets of polystyrene that they then formed their own model of a playground on, their own design on. And they got to, it was just epic. The things that they created, like the flying foxes, the water park themes, everything that they put into their own playground. So it's just a real expression of their own personality and their own, their own enjoyment of playgrounds. So going across, you can see a boy cutting out a part of a book. This challenge was in the business sector, and their challenge was to double their money through making and selling upcycled goods or upcycled products. So we went to a couple of different venues that are a bit of a hub for the collection of recyclable materials. We went to one that does more like farm goods and antiques. We went to another one that had more stationery and bits and pieces that were upcycled. And so the kids got a feel for the different types of materials that you could use to create something new. And this boy had cut out parts of the book, and from memory, he created a cactus garden in that book. Is that what he did, Jay? Do you remember? Yeah, I think it was, he created a cactus garden in that. He shellacked it and made it waterproof, and then created a garden in that. And it's such a creative idea. Somebody else got tin cans and painted them, and a palette and cut it up and made a wooden box with pot plants in it. Others used CDs and cut them up and stuck them on round polystyrene balls to create mirror balls. So there was just like such a range of creative expressions to a challenge. So it's not like our education is like, here's an apple, draw an apple, and everybody draws an apple and it all looks the same with slight variances. This is, here's your challenge. How are you going to outwork it given your skills, your passions, your interests? And everyone comes up with something different, which is just such a delight. So going down the bottom left-hand corner, this challenge was within, it was a story writing challenge. And I think it was in design and construction. So designing and constructing a story. Can't remember exactly which one that fit under, but I have never, ever seen children so focused on story writing, on writing at all, except for this challenge. So they got to create their own characters. They got to do their own artwork. They got to, well, the goal was actually to publish a book. So they knew what was going to be the outcome, and they put in so much effort and so much thought and hours of their time. And then they'd go to Officeworks, or they'd go online, and they would upload their stories and then print them out. And we had a book signing event where they got to stand behind their tables, display their artworks or the inspiration for their stories, and sell their books and sign their books. So it's just such a cool experience. And I've, again, never seen kids so engaged in writing as I did through that challenge. The one in the middle there at the bottom, this challenge was another epic challenge. It was how to be a pilot. So we had people who were really interested in being a pilot at Dream School at the time. And we were out and about all the time, because at Dream School, we use our entire community as our classroom. So we were at an aviation expo. We went to the RAF base. We went to the Gold Coast Sports Flying Club, where the gentlemen had made their own planes. We went to an air show, and we actually went flying. And the instructor on the left handed the controls to my son on the right. So he was actually literally flying the plane that we were in. And through that, you know, some kids recognized that flying wasn't their thing. It wasn't something that they wanted to pursue, but they were very interested in experiencing those things. So in the end, it works out whether they gravitate to it or not through an experience. They find out what's on their core and they can move towards that. Top left, those shoes. We had a shoe making challenge. Now, who's ever thought to make their own shoes? Yeah, this is such a cool challenge. We went to the op shop. The kids got to buy a pair of shoes from the op shop and then pull them apart. And the amount of material in a shoe is quite astounding. You know, we don't realize the layers that are involved in the detail in a shoe creation. Then we also had a shoemaker come into Dream School and brought his tools, and he was making some, what are those big boots? I can't remember again. Those big heavy boots. He was making a set of mini ones of them for his granddaughter, and he was showing us how he did it. So he had, you know, his needles and his threads and his leather, and it was just a fascinating thing to watch him work on these shoes. And then he gave the kids their own pieces of leather and press studs and leather thong, and they got to fiddle and play with that too. Into the middle, we had a photography challenge where they had to submit photos to certain criteria. So we had 5 emotions. We had anger, we had love, we had joy, we had sadness, and then one other that they had to submit a photo that would express that emotion. And we connected with the photography club, and those people came and they took our kids out and about, teaching them what to look for, how to frame, how to use their SLR cameras. And they got to develop their photos, to frame them, and we held an exhibition as part of our celebration day. And again, you know, what you have done and what you have achieved on display for other people to appreciate. It's just such an awesome outcome. Going to the right, another business challenge was to create a business that would earn them the money to go to Thailand. And at that time, we were planning a trip to Thailand. We had another challenge running, which was a travel agent challenge. And those kids had to create schedules, they had to create itineraries, they had to work out where we were going to go in Thailand, what sort of food we might encounter, what experiences we could have over there, how much it was all going to cost. And they came up with this itinerary and a cost that they then shared or pitched at our community, hoping to lure them to Thailand. So that was really fun. Down in the bottom left was a very cool challenge. It was called To Sew Your Dream. Now, not many of these kids, some of them had sewing experience, but they got to have skills. So they did smaller projects in the lead up to creating something that they dreamed about creating. And you can see them, we had a catwalk and we had them sharing their creations with us. Into the middle, this is a theatre challenge. So this is a media and communications challenge, where the kids wanted to create their own theatre production. So we had them in groups. We had a set and lighting group, we had a choreography group, we had a script writing group, we had a music creation composing group, and they could choose which one they wanted to be in, and brought all this together as a theatre production that we shared with 100 people who paid to come and hang out with us. And it was so amazing. It was so exciting to see the level of confidence and poise that these kids had in fulfilling their production. On the far right bottom, we had a challenge to become a junior master chef. So you can see his apron. We created our own aprons with our own logos along the MasterChef Junior symbol. And these kids had mini challenges. So every week we'd give them a new challenge. So one week the challenge was to create a meal for your family that that was under $10. Another one was that they had to create afternoon tea for some elders in our community. We invited them along and they served them. We had a challenge to make visible your legacy or your lineage through your lineage. So where do your grandparents come from, and what sort of meals did they make, or what's the meals that symbolize that country that they came from? And so they got to have, you know, numerous different challenges to do with cooking and food production, which is very relevant. And we got to eat lots of yummy meals, didn't we, Jay? So at Dream School, we didn't start off like this. We started with really everybody all together, but slowly as we've moved along, we've refined things, and we now have dedicated challenges for our minis. Now Jay runs our minis on a Friday, and it's very much to do with being in the natural environment, growing their brains, making those dendritic connections. We have dreamers who are our 7 to 12 plus. We're not hard and fast on ages. It's really when the kids are ready that they move into these, and they show that by their interest level. They come in, they want to be a part of the challenges. You know, when they're ready to move from minis to dreamers. And then we have our Dream On group, who are our 12 plus. And some really key, exciting things about that group is our vision for them is to live successfully independently when they leave home. So we've done, you know, a number of different challenges. A couple of terms ago, we did a challenge on authenticity, you know, becoming authentically you. We did a challenge where they got the opportunity to learn how to drive, you know, as 12 and 13 and 15-year-olds, and learn how to maintain a car. We've done budgetary, you know, financial challenges where they've learned about investment and had the opportunity to invest in things like cryptocurrencies or stocks or art, where they've had just a whole range of opportunities open up to them, and assistance with that. You know, one of our dads is good at finance and investment, and he comes alongside them and just gives them opportunities and shows them how to do things that they never would have had exposure to. We're looking into NFTs and all sorts of things around, you know, along those lines for the future. So there are our groups. The other thing about Dream On is that we recognise that this is a significant time in their age, in their life, where they are coming of age. They're moving from childhood into adulthood. And one of the most beautiful things about this is that we get to celebrate them moving from childhood to adulthood. So we have a process where those who choose to can meet with their dad or their mum every week and go over some material that we have. And then at the end of that process, which is about a year long, we hold what we call an emerge ceremony, where we celebrate their moving from childhood to adulthood. And that's such a significant thing, you know, because for any event in our lives where we're moving from one state to another, we celebrate. We have a ceremony like marriage, like death, like getting your license. There's a celebration attached to things, and that really defines and solidifies that movement. And it actually creates kids who have come through and into adulthood in a really appropriate fashion. So they're not having to go out and risk themselves, their bodies and limbs, you know, to try and prove themselves, prove that they're an adult. They have a ceremony that defines that they are now adult. And we made that ceremony wedding level. So we had a large white gazebo on a beautiful property. We had our dreamers, our younger ones, as our waitresses. We had a chef who cooked our meals for us. We had a ceremony of cutting a ribbon and of moving across that ribbon from childhood to adulthood. We had parents validating them and speaking words of life over them. And it was just a really special event. We had a photographer, we had a limo, we had the works, just to show them how special and significant they are, and that this transition has taken place. They are now considered adults in our community. So that's a really special part of our Dream Honours. We have 2 rules at Dream School, and only 2. We don't try and define everything, but these 2 rules seem to cover everything. So our first is look after each other's bodies and hearts. And our second is, if you make a mess, you've got to clean it up. And in our community, we understand that if a dog was to come into the lounge room and poop on the carpet, what would happen if that mess didn't get cleaned up? You know, it'd permeate the house. It would cause a stink. You wouldn't want to live there. And that's the same with messes, particular messes on hearts, that if they're not cleaned up, they will move and they will create such a big stink that people will not want to be there. They'll leave, or they'll be there under duress. So we are very intentional about following up on these particular rules and making sure that it's done well. And we don't get everyone, but it's also, again, sort of taking out the shame factor, because we all make messes. None of us is immune to dirty laundry, dirty washing, but it's so empowering to know that you're not held to that mess. It's not like a label on you that you have to live with for the rest of your life. You have the capacity to fix that up and fix up that relationship, reintegrate and reconnect with those people. Very, very empowering process. So as part of Dream School's documentation, we have a culture building protocol, and that takes those values that we have and enunciates them, puts them on paper, and spells out what it is that makes our Dream School cohesive, makes us different from everybody else, or makes us connect into the whole. And those values are different and will be different for every Dream School. So each Dream School sort of hub would come up with their own, but yeah, it sort of really defines what is us and what distinguishes us. And that's really important. We refer to that very often as to referencing what is appropriate in our context, in our community, and what is not. And that's, yeah, very, very helpful. This is how our day looks. We get together well, this is slightly off for what we're doing now, but this is basically what we do. Get together, greeting, worship. We do a compulsory challenge, and that's to get everybody together having shared experiences. It's actually really interesting when you get to dinner time in Dream School families, because there is so much to talk about because of what we've been involved in during the day. There is no level of hesitancy or shyness about speaking at the table and sharing experiences. When kids go to school, because we're so separate, you know, one kid's in this class, one kid's over here, parents are at work in separate, usually separate careers. You come together at the dining table and you haven't got those shared experiences to be able to discuss. You're asking, so how was your day? And they're like, yeah, fine. What did you do? Not much. So there's not really a whole lot of fodder for conversation, rich conversation. Yet at Dream School, because we've had these shared experiences throughout the day, throughout the years, we have a lot of rich content to inform our discussions and conversations. So then we have family time, and we stick family time right in the middle of the 2 challenge experiences, for the reason of protecting play. Now, we talked about how important play is, and we knew that if we put family time, which is an unstructured play time, plus eating your lunch, if we put that at the beginning or at the end, it would get eaten up by being late, by people's appointment schedules, and we would lose it. So we stuck it in the middle on purpose to protect it from erosion, because we know how important play is. And I mean, play happens in the challenges anyway. One of the prerequisites for running a challenge is that it's playful. How does it develop kids' capacity to play? How does it engage them in play? So really the whole day is some form of play, but we leave time for unstructured play, where we're not telling them what they need to be doing during those hours, that hour and a half. And then we have choices challenges, and the kids, in all of this, they're very involved in what these challenges are, what we're going to be doing in those challenge experiences. And particularly in the choices challenges, they get to run challenges for other kids to join them. And they will pitch their challenge idea to the community of kids, and then the kids get to choose which one they're going to participate in for the term. And that's always very nerve-wracking for them, but very growth producing. And then at the end of the day, because we know if we make a mess, we've got to clean it up, every child has a role to play in cleaning up the place that we've used. So whether they're sweeping or mopping or wiping out basins, toilets, whatever it is, everyone has a role to play there in getting our venue back to how it was, or better than it was. So I'm often asked, how do kids that go through Dream School end up being able to pursue university careers? Because they don't end up with a score at Dream School. They end up with loads of experiences and a direction, but not a score. But there are many, many different ways to get into university or TAFE courses or college, rather than having a Year 12 score. You can, there are a number of families at Dream School that do a distance ed program alongside Dream School. So they will do the curriculum for the years up to Year 12 and end up with a score. But for those that don't, those that are more sort of unschooling, I guess, in their approach, how do they get into university courses? There's a test called a Special Tertiary Admissions Test, a STAT test. And anybody can do that test, and that test will give them an equivalent score to a Year 12 score. And that is used to as an alternative entry into university. You can also do bridging courses. You can do TAFE courses. You can, in a lot of courses now, they recognise that a score is not a good measure of a person's interest or abilities in a particular course. So they're looking at profiles or portfolios or references or prior experience now in admitting kids to higher learning opportunities. So yeah, it's definitely not an issue to not have a Year 12 score. There are many ways around that. And again, if they're intrinsically motivated, they will do whatever it takes to get to where they want to go. So it's again nurturing that play to passion to purpose pathway. So what we want to do with Dream School is to create hubs. We've got one parent Dream School, but we are very keen to, for this, particularly in this environment of mandates and things like that, to provide the opportunity for as many kids as possible to be a part of this process of finding what's on the inside of them and being able to chase that, follow that through. So our real strong desire is to create Dream School hubs where Dream Schools happen all over the state and interstate, and they can all happen really well because the platform of Dream School is set up, and the resources are all there, and the way that it can happen means it's because the flexibility of Dream School model means it can happen in Africa as much as it could happen in England. It could happen in a schooling structure environment as it could happen in a home. It doesn't need a set of criteria really for it to happen. It's just challenges that are outworked and kids that are celebrated. And so it's a very, very flexible model. So with these whole Dream School hubs, we want to set them up as a franchise, in a franchise arrangement, an affordable arrangement. We don't have exact figures on that yet, the franchising fees, but it will be affordable, because if it's not, then what's the point? We want to offer mentoring to whoever decides to run a hub. We will be there with you, we will help you, we will resource you, we will answer your questions, we will help you solve problems. And what we also want to do is to bring the hubs together occasionally through the year. So we can run a challenge that happens over a day all together, or we could have a camp together, or we could, hold a celebration day together where we get to experience each other and share resources, ideas, challenges, outcomes and things, things that have worked, things that haven't, and just be a real cross-pollinating community. So in starting a hub, we don't want just anybody to decide they want to run a hub and start a hub, because they may not be an appropriate person. So we do have an application process. It's not long, it's not tedious, but it's just an understanding of who you are, getting references, and making sure that that you're a safe person for our kids to be around. So that's in the throes of getting developed. Then we're going to have like an interview process and a training day where we can get everybody who's interested together, and we can talk about the real nuts and bolts of getting a dream school up and running. How do you do it practically? How do you connect with the parents? We've got all sorts of resources, down to the nitty-gritties, like invoices, an invoice performer, or a budget performer, or an expense reporting sheet, or the planner itself. That all that has been developed in the last 7 years, that is now quite refined and ready for purpose. So we'll have a guide that you can follow to, step by step. This is what you need to do first. This is what you need to do next. And just giving you a real sort of a counseled way through setting up a Dream School Hub. So it works well for you. So that's Dream School. That's why we do Dream School. And that is the outworking of what it looks like. So just like to throw it open to any questions that you have on anything that I've shared or that I haven't shared, I've missed. Please feel free to just share away.
Thanks, Jackie. That was great.
Thanks, Angela.
Me again. With just one practical thing, where do you base yourself? Like, do you have does it stay in one house and one area, or is it different houses, or is it like a base for the hub? How does that work?
Yeah, well, Dream School itself started in somebody else's carport. We were just on their property under their carport with tarps up around us when it rained. So we then hired or leased a house, a large old house with some land, and we lived in half the house and ran Dream School in the other half of the house. Since moving up to Mount Tamborine, we have sort of hopped around different venues as they became available or as we outgrew them. So we had a church hall. We were in a commercial sort of letting premises. We were at Thunderbird Lodge for a while. We were also at the QCCC campgrounds, and now we've landed at the showgrounds, and that seems to be more of a permanent arrangement there. So but in given different contexts, a Dream School Hub may hop around people's houses, just to give a bit of balance for a particular family. If they don't want Dream School in their house the whole time, they can move around people's houses. So it's really wherever there is an appropriate space available and for what fits your community, that's what could work.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's ideal to have a bit of a stable environment. But given the fact, the way that we do challenges, we don't have a lot of resources that need to be stored. It'd be nice to have some storage, but that'd get junked up. So we bring whatever we need on the day. So each family, let's say they're doing Jay ran a what was it, pallet construction, pallet projects.
Yes, pallet projects. So the challenge was to create anything you wanted out of a pallet. So
they brought their own saws and sawhorses and drills and everything to Dream School for the day when they needed it. Yeah, so it becomes quite easy to resource when you've got families contributing to the resources of the school. It means you have minimal waste. So we're not buying 15 drills, and having them sit on a shelf for the next 5 months while they're not being used. We have families contributing to the resourcing of Dream School. And it also means our budget isn't as, bulbous. We don't have to charge ridiculous amounts, for different challenges because of the nature of the materials they're going to need for that challenge. We're very good at sourcing things we need because we've got a community of people. And I think, that's one of the values of Dream School is the community. So Jay would run a challenge that I wouldn't get near to running because I don't have the interest or the capacity or the skills. And so she runs that, and then my kids get to experience what she runs, which they never would have if I'd have tried to homeschool them myself.
Yeah.
So there's a real synergy again in having community do schooling together. Good question.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts? I think one of the interesting things to outrolling hubs will be the finances of things. What different hubs charge will probably differ according to the mixture of people involved in that hub. So, for example, if you have a group of families that want to send their children to a Dream School hub and have somebody else run challenges for their kids or be involved in that, then there would be probably a higher fee involved there than if the hub, like say, for example, Dream School, every family comes with a parent. So we don't need to employ anybody for that hub to run. So in terms of Dream School Mount Tamborine, we get by on a charge of $155 per student per term. Now, if you're paying, I know my kids were going to theatre, that's $300 a term for one 1-hour lesson a week. Now, Dream School has 2 full days a week, and we do it on $155 per student. Plus, we also discount for multiple children in a family. And we offer also an incentive for running challenges. So we want to repay those who put in time and effort into running a challenge. So we reimburse them a portion of their fee as well. So yeah, we do a lot on a little. But I think it makes you very resourceful and inventive too. So we have so many different experiences, but we also have the capacity, with having parents with us to get kids places. So every kid comes in a car and that car can take them somewhere else. So we don't have the transport issues. We don't need to have a bus. We don't need to have, supervision brought in. It all becomes very easy when you have parents right there. But that's not, that is so flexible in terms of the model of Dream School that, a group that needs to have somebody, paid to facilitate this with their kids can do that too.
Jackie, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering, do you still run the tambourine one? I mean, I'm down in Pimpama, but I was referred. I've heard all about your program from Zoe, and I don't mind the drive. I mean, 2 days a week, you're saying. So do you still run it in Tambourine, or are you doing this session just to talk about the hubs and the franchising?
Yeah, we do still have the Dream School up here. Our issue at the moment is numbers. So we've pretty much reached capacity for this Dream School up here. So we've had large influx of interest.
Yeah.
Given the current circumstances. So we have, multiple families on a waiting list. now. So yeah, but by all means, if you're interested in coming to see our dream school or being a part of it, you're welcome to put your name down, and we can work out a trial day where you can see if it really does fit for you and for us, and then we can, when a space becomes available, we can invite you into that.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that. I would definitely be interested to the tambourine one.
Sure.
I'll definitely send you the message later.
Yeah, sure, no problem at all.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, any more thoughts or questions? Jay, have you got anything more to add to?
I don't think so. It's pretty clear. I'm really excited to see how many of these pop up. It was really great to hear that you had such a great interest at in-person meeting this morning. I think, yeah, it may sound a little scary, but step by step with someone holding your hand, it's going to end up totally fine. You can't, but like, just start, just take a step. Don't be afraid, ask for help. There's always a solution to every problem. And yeah, I think there's a big need for it. And not only do my children got a lot out of it over the years, I have as well. Running challenges, I've learned things I've always wanted to learn about. I think it was my idea to run the aquaponics, and it was just so amazing to be able to, as a grown-up, go back and learn something I was interested in, and it didn't feel weird or strange or anything. It was fantastic. And so now often when I'm thinking about challenges with my kids, half the time I get just as excited as they are, because I didn't get the chance to do this when I was a kid. So there is benefit all around, and yeah, I think this is a great way to do homeschooling and to experience life with your kids. So yeah, get on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what we will be doing is on that Facebook group, we'll be putting up the next step in terms of calling for interest. So if anybody is interested in setting up a Dream School Hub, we will organise with them and have a training day where we'll be able to get together and go through the nuts and bolts and share the resources that we have. So yeah, I think that's the next step. And then for those who would like to move forward with that, we will help with the sourcing of students for that particular hub, through our networks and connections, but also, yours, if that's what you'd like to pursue, looking at who's around you, who would be interested in sharing information with them. We have a family pack, an information pack, which we can share. That's something that you can use yourself as a family wanting to be involved in Dream School, but also as a facilitator wanting to run a Dream School Hub. That can be something you can share with interested families that will give them the information as to what Dream School is, and then there's an enrollment form at the back of that too that they can fill out and submit to you as a facilitator. So yeah, we've got all that ready to go, and so in the next few days we will be sharing that information as to dates and places and times and things like that for training. Yeah. And then we can put up the hubs that are there and people can join.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No worries. Okay, well, we might call it a night. If you have any questions, please feel free to connect with me. More than happy to answer any of your questions, and particularly if they're questions you feel are relevant to other people, posting them on that page that we have, the Dream School Hubs Interest Group page, and sharing them with us, with everybody, and then everybody gets to see the answers too. So yeah.
Well, I just have a question, a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
What does the Dream School look like during lockdown? How do you yeah.
How do we do Dream School during lockdown?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we again, it's a very flexible model, so we can move to an online platform. So we've been using Zoom And the challenges can still continue on Zoom. So, for example, with our Junior MasterChef Challenge, we had them all together on Zoom. We gave them their challenge for the day. They went about and cooked what they wanted to cook, came back onto Zoom and shared their creations. And that worked really well. We did Around the World in 80 Days with Jay again, and had a really rich experience in researching continents and significant experiences within continents. And then the kids created their own 80-day itinerary, getting themselves around the world, and we did that on Zoom. So Zoom is, it's not ideal, but it's far better than nothing, and being disconnected. So we do utilize that during lockdowns, so we just continue as normal.
Yes. Yeah. And one last question. Sorry. I have
Oh, no, go for it. Please do.
To make it work, how many families, the minimum of family in a Dream School hub?
2.
Two, right.
Yeah. You don't need loads of people. It's just a family outside of yours that you can connect with and bounce ideas and do challenges together with. So it doesn't need to be large. I mean, the larger you get, the more cross-pollination happens.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need a larger group of people together. Just 2 families is enough.
In the age groupings, as you've grown, do you see that, like you said, you're at capacity? So in those age, like Dream On and Dreamers, do you have a certain amount then that you go, this is kind of what we see as a good balance of numbers?
We haven't split it up into age group allocations. Yeah, we've just sort of, because we take families come with a range of different ages. So we could end up with more in minis and less in Dream On, or we could be the other way, as well. So we really just go on a number that we feel is a comfortable fit for the venue, but also that we don't lose that sense of community. We do limit our numbers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. It was so lovely to meet you all and to share with you, and really look forward to connecting with you again in the future. So please be in touch, and we'll put out information as the steps proceed. So again, thank you, and
thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Yeah, so welcome. Yeah. All right. All right, and thanks to Jay for co-hosting with me. I really appreciate it, Jay, all your experiences and input into Dream School and into tonight. So
Happy to help. Thank you.
Yeah, lots of love. All right, have a lovely evening. We'll see you again.
Thank you.
Bye.